All right, Hotep family, welcome to this little channel that I have here, Mdw Ntr. Today, I'm focusing on African people along the Nile and how they saw themselves. I'm a little congested this morning, so bear with me. I don't think I have a lot of slides to share, but I'm going to focus on reading the Mdw Ntr and looking at some of the images that our ancestors left behind. So if you have any comments, Anise, Hotep, welcome. Oh, that's my cousin. Actually, my niece. Good morning. All right. Let's see what we have here. All right. So our goal is to be able to read the sacred script of our African ancestors, which hopefully we know now is identified as Mdw Ntr. It's written in this case the symbol for Ntr is written first because it has honorific position, and Mdw is written afterwards. But when we say it, we say Mdw Ntr. It's literally the walking sticks, the physical support of the Ntr. However, I did learn recently from a viewer that in the Igbo language, Mdw Ntr is translated as thoughts of man. Kind of makes sense. I have this quote here from Dr. John Henry Clark, which I want to start off with. It says, to control a people, you must first control what they think about themselves and how they regard their history and culture. And when your conqueror makes you ashamed of your culture and your history, he needs no prison walls and no chains to hold you. That's Dr. John Henry Clark. Great man. I had the pleasure of being in his company a number of times. All right, so there are lots of images of our people that we don't get a chance to see. I did have the opportunity to travel to Egypt a number of times and took a lot of photos. This is a photo from inside of a museum, and what we can see in this photo. Let me make it bigger. And what we see in here are apparently women. And a closer look, you kind of see they're working with some sort of cloth. Clearly, they're all women. There are words that go with this. Well, I don't know if they go specifically with this picture, but I want to identify some of the many words in the Mdw Ntr that is translated in English as people. So on the left-hand side, we see the garden hole and the mouth and the loaf of bread. And the seated people behind is a seated man and seated woman. Well, those are people. The three strokes below that tells me that this is a plural. So in English, the plural, we use the S. In Mdw Ntr, the plural, we use three strokes, either three strokes horizontally or three strokes vertically. So now what is it that we do in order to translate this set of sacred symbols into English? Well, we need to first transliterate. Transliterate means to rewrite the Mdw Ntr in Roman alphabet. We use the Roman alphabet, so all of the letters A through Z are Roman alphabets. So we would transliterate the hole, the garden hole, with the letters MR, and actually the mouth here serves as a phonetic complement. That is to say that that mouth does not have to be there, and I still know that that hole is MR. And we would try to pronounce that as mare, right? And with the loaf of bread, which is transliterated with the letter T, that would give us merit. Now, it turns out that Mary is actually the translated in English as love, which is kind of interesting. So this is, if I put them together, I would get merit. And merit is translated in Gardner's dictionary as people. And it kind of makes sense. We see that, again, the determinative of the two seated figures, the seated man and seated woman, tells me that the whole, the mouth, and the loaf of bread is referring to people. And again, so we would consider this one way of saying people merit. Okay. Now, are these people the same people in the image? I'm not going to say that they are. I just combined some images with some words to show you how we represented ourselves in images and in words. Another way to represent people, in this case, on the image I have is some men look like they are what is animal husbandry, they call that. And there's a lot of other stuff going on up on the stage where we see people seated. Probably, if you could look carefully, I think there's some scribes. So some folks are making records, but this is what we did. We were farmers. We worked, and so these are images that were created at that time. So these are not fabrications of something new. So in this case, if we look at the Mdw Ntr on the left, we see what is a field of reeds, right? A field of reeds, and it's very interesting because in Mdw Ntr, if I want to show something is a multiplicity of times, I just have to show it 3 times. We still do that in English. When you want to repeat something 3 times, it's enough to say that's all of them. So we have the field of reeds, we have the loaf of bread, and we have, again, these are 2 reed leaves. These 2 reed leaves are kind of abbreviated. So rather than having 2 reed leaves, they can write 2 diagonal strokes to mean the same thing. The field of reeds is transliterated with the letters S, H, T. The 2 reed leaves, again with the 2 diagonal strokes, are transliterated with the letter Y. And then the loaf of bread is a T again, and that T again is a phonetic complement. So I could show those 3 reed leaves in that shati, shot, with the extra 2 horizontal lines, or sorry, diagonal lines. That gives me shot T. And we have the seated man again. So this tells me that this is talking about people. In this case, this is talking about men, but it is again people, one way of saying people. So again, this would be transliterated as shati, right? With the 2 diagonal reed leaves as a Y. That comes up again. Another way to say people, they have multiple ways of saying people. So in this case, again, on the right in the image, we see another occupation, I would say, where we have fishermen working together in groups. We see 2 in the front. We barely see 2 in the back. But again, this is what our people look like, and this is what they did. So this is our African people along the Nile. So in the Mdw Ntr, we see the mouth. We see the placenta. We see 2 reed leaves. Again, these 2 reed leaves are up vertical as opposed to the 2 diagonal ones, but it has the exact same transliteration. It's going to transliterate as a Y. And again, the loaf of bread, which is the T. And then we have this interesting bird. This bird is a composite of many birds together, and it is often identified as representing all people or everyone. And again, we have the 3 plural strokes below that. So we know, just looking at the determinative with the bird, with the composited bird with the plural strokes, that this is telling us everyone. So if I just saw that by itself, I know it's everyone. But we have, again, some Mdw Ntr in front of that. And so if we transliterate the Mdw Ntr in front of that, the mouth is transliterated with the letter R. The placenta is transliterated with the letters K and H. The reed leaf, again, the two reed leaves is Y, a transliteration, and the loaf of bread is T. Now, I made the decision that the transliteration is going to put the T in front of the Y. And so that would give us recti. Now, why did I put the T in front of the Y? Because of symmetry. I think that in order to maintain the symmetry, we often see that the scribes will change the order so that things look in a certain form. If I move the T in front of the two reed leaves, it throws off the symmetry. And I also know recti is another name for one of my earlier teachers in Mdw Ntr, Sister Rickety. So Rickety is another way of saying that, recti or rickety. Right? And again, this is another way to say all the people or everyone is translated in English as people. Another way to translate or to write people, the word people, using Mdw Ntr symbols, we have the mouth, which of course is the R, and then we have the tethered rope. But again, we see the determinative is two people, a male and a female, seated with plural strokes. So we know that whatever symbol's in front of here, it's referring to people. In this case, we have, again, the mouth, which is R, the tethered rope, which is TCH. And again, the way they transliterate this, they use some special symbols in different books, but I use the TCH because I don't have all of those symbols. So what do we have here? So again, let me just point out the people. I'm ignoring the people for a minute here. But the actual images of the people, we see men working with tools. Some are maybe sharpening, some may be making them. So this is another occupation. And again, these are images that our ancestors left us. They didn't have a Kodak and Polaroid, so they did these models. And of course, if they wanted to make these characters, these images any different color, they could have, because we do see that they had white and they had a light brown. So they chose the particular colors to represent the people as they were. So now we have the mouth and we have the tethered rope together. And if I put that together, actually, I believe that that's I would translate this as rich, right? I like that as calling it rich, because I think our people are rich. And that might be where the word rich comes from. I'm not sure. I know sometimes we think rich means something completely different, but I think our people are rich. So again, this is another way to identify how we wrote the word people in Mdw Ntr. Okay. Again, our people represented themselves again in images, in models, and so we see on the right, we see the model. These are clearly warriors of some sort. Well, definitely warriors. They have the bows and arrows in their hands, and they're in the file, marching file, which soldiers still do nowadays. So it's nothing new. And so looking at the Mdw Ntr, which is again what we want to be able to read, and it takes time to read it. I'm just giving you some basics right now. So what we have at the top is a game board. That game board is actually the game board that's identified as men. And so we see the game board. Right below the game board is a ripple of water, which is an N. And so the ripple of water, in fact, could be a phonetic complement. So I could not have the ripple of water and know that's men. The horned viper is transliterated with the letter F. Again, we see the two reed leaves, which again is a Y, and the loaf of bread, which is a T. Right, and the determinative in this case is a seated soldier, I'm going to say, with a bow in his hand and probably arrows on his shoulder. And then we see the plural strokes. In this case, the plural strokes, because of symmetry, they made them vertical behind the seated man as opposed to below him. Right. So again, transliterating, we have menef, right? The men and F, and then we have the loaf of bread, which is T, and we have the reed leaves as Y. So this could be, and again, I again believe that we're going to put that T in front of the Y for purpose of symmetry, and this would be menefti. And again, my pronunciation is just my guesses. I really don't know how they would have pronounced it. That's one of the challenges that we have with with speaking the language. There's some belief that people in Ethiopia might speak a dialect of it. Some people probably in Sudan probably speak a dialect of it, but I don't have any firm information. So I would go with the Min FD. And again, so that's one way that they would identify these particular people, right? These are soldiers. So as opposed to the seated man and the seated woman, we see that there is a seated, well, a kneeling soldier, I will say. So we know that these symbols in front of that Mdw Ntr symbol, in front of that determinative, tells us this relates to soldiers. And if you didn't want to write all of the Mdw Ntr, I guess if they didn't want to write it, I could just write this as Menefti, but then I would have to know. This is kind of an abbreviation. So we take, for instance, we don't write Louisiana out. We just write LA, right? So in this case, if I just wrote in Mdw Ntr the symbol of the seated man with the bow and arrow, I know that that would be Menefti because it's an abbreviation. In this case, again, and I know that we're talking about men because we have the seated man with the plural strokes as a determinative. So I have a number of meneftis, not just the one soldier by itself, but I have soldiers. Another way to write the same thing, we have these multiple ways of writing words in English and in other languages. I came across this one also. So in this case, we have the owl, we have the pool, and we have the arm and the hand, right? So, and again, the determinative is the seated man with the bow and arrow. So we know that these Mdw Ntr symbols are referring to the seated man with the bow and arrow. And how do we transliterate those? Well, the owl is transliterated with the letter M, the pool with the letters SH, and the arm in the hand with the letter A. So again, if we put that together, we get something like Nsha, Nsha. Um, again, how to pronounce it? Don't don't uh, uh, don't quote me on pronunciation, but that's how I would come up with it. Nsha. Okay, so we have at least three different ways of identifying our people who are soldiers. We have Menefti, Menefti twice, and then we have Nsha. So all three of those look like they could and should, because again of the determinative, represent soldiers. Another group of soldiers here we have these soldiers who are carrying what we would call spears and shields. And one other way to identify this group is the word is the Mdw Ntr using the loaf of bread and the uchik or the quail chick. We call the quail chick uchik because we use the sound of W a U to represent that bird, that particular bird, that quail chick. And then below that, we have again the the uchik, the arm and the hand, the uchik, and then we have another determinative, which is a hand with a stick in it, right? We have the uchik, the arm and the hand, the uchik, and the determinative with a stick in it, arm and the hand with a stick in it. Transliterating these, the loaf of bread is T. Again, the uchik is, I use W, some people use U. So I stick with the W, but it can be W or U. So we have 2 at the top, which again is translated as people. I'm not sure. They call that the indefinite pronoun of people, people in general, I guess. But then below we have the uchik and the arm and the hand in the uchik, which would give us au. And then we have the arm and the hand with a stick. So that tells me that these people apparently are carrying sticks or possibly weapons. So 2 would just be people in general. Uau would be people that are armed. So we have, again, 2, meaning just people. And then we have uau, which should mean people carrying sticks or people with weapons. And then we do have this image here, which again is a way of representing people. In this case, the determinative here is a cow's cow hide. It looks like something with a tail on it. It's really a cowhide, which kind of makes sense because we're now talking about something with cowhide. And in this case, we have the reed leaf, we have the crocodile skin, and we Egyptian owl. Turns out the crocodile skin and the Egyptian owl is also used to represent the name of the people. Most often, we would say people are Kemet, Kemetu. We say the area, we call it Kemet. And Kemet is the black land of the black people. And we can see the crocodile tail is in fact black for sure. But the relief in front of that would give us an I or an A or E, depending on which vocalization you want to use for that. So this would be E-chem, A-chem, either one, because the pronunciation of the vowels is always a little tricky. So for amen, we could say amen, emen, amen. In this case, we get e-chem or a-chem. And again, because it has that the cowhide, we know that's relating to something with cowhide. So possibly we're talking about these guys, these men, because of the shields they have is made with cowhide. So again, this is Echem, Achem, however you want to pronounce it. Now, those were everyday people. Those are the everyday people. There are other people that come up more often in Mdw Ntr because they had the leadership role and they represented all the people. The Greeks called them pharaohs. Their correct titles were Nasut Biti. They were the representatives of Upper and Lower Egypt. So what we see here on this screen is on the far left, right above my head, we see this is the Nasut Biti Setai I and his son Ramesses II, Ursma'at Ra, Setepten Ra. And he's showing his son, Setai I is showing his son the list of all of the Nasut Bitis who came before him. Right. So what I will do in the next lesson is actually identify some of these Nasut Biti. I get most of the information about the Nasut Bitis from Dr. Ben's Black Men and Now and his family. Dr. Ben is the premier expert on this area. In this book, he has a list of all of the Nasubitis, and it's quite a remarkable work. So what I will do in the next lesson, hopefully when I feel better, a little bit nasal right now, is present more information from this book and identify, I think, focusing on 2 or 3 of those pharaohs from, I should say, Nasubitis from that dynasty. Meanwhile, I think that is all for me. So I appreciate those who showed up, and I look forward to sharing more information in my next lesson. I will say Shem Hotep. Um, any questions or comments before I leave? You can post a comment, post a question. But that is all for me right now. Okay. It's been my pleasure. Shem Hotep.